Hi guys, my name's Seb Tudor, I'm the man on the Silver Mountain and welcome back. Now today I wanted to talk about manipulation and this isn't big manipulation, by the way. It's not mind twisting and all the rest of it, but it's subtle little things. I've got 9 things here jotted down that people around you might use to manipulate you or that you might be able to use to your advantage. But more so, I want to talk about these because I have seen these used before by people who are just aware of them, just to mess with people, just to get compliance, just to mess you around. And so, especially when I was learning about these things through either coaching, as some of these I've talked about before, through about rapport building and things like that, they all come into that kind of thing. But also some of these are outside of that. Um, you know, oh, excuse me, it's very much a case of these things can be used to really mess with you. And so you can use them to your advantage. There are places to use them to your advantage, as said, in regards to building rapport with people, as said, in regards to finding a way to better communicate with others. But there are a few things here that are usually used by people with less scruples, shall we say, than others to mess with you. And I'll highlight those as we actually go through. But one of the first ones is actually one of these that I've seen used horribly before, just because people aren't aware of themselves a lot of the time and the way that people are interacting with them. But often when you're talking and you're just nodding your head, it's one of these things. It's like this. And you're just nodding, going, yeah, no, it's one of these things that we need to do, and I think we need to do it, don't we? It's just the way it is. And so, I was inclined to shake my head there because I'm actually not telling the truth, because it's a completely hypothetical situation. But often when people are nodding their head when they're talking to you, it's not necessarily a natural thing to do. And so if they're nodding their head whilst they're talking, there could be an element of them trying to engage with you, because we mirror each other. We're social animals and we live in herds, in packs. And so when it comes to communication, there's an awful lot of body language stuff that goes completely unnoticed by our conscious mind. And so when it comes to someone talking to you and they're just going, it's a positive idea, you're going to agree, aren't you? Then your brain goes, mm-hmm. Sure. Yeah, no, we should be nodding as well. Why are we nodding? It sounds like a terrible idea, but no, we're going to nod. We're going to nod. And then it's that doing that then informs the rest of your brain. It's like smile until you feel happy. Yeah? You smile. Your brain goes, you're smiling. It goes, there must be something to be keeping us happy, right? In which case then it plugs in to go, okay, well, we must be happy, and then you actually smile more. It's why if you try to smile and think of something happy, it's really hard to say something negative to someone. The number of times the kind of either coaches or kind of motivational speakers will go, okay, turn to the person next to you and smile, but say something really nasty about them. Okay, now frown and say something nice about them. And it just doesn't work. You burst into laughter. It doesn't compute. There's this disconnect, and this is the same kind of thing. It's the body informing the mind as much as anything else. And so, being aware of that, allowing yourself to be skeptical, even when someone is potentially playing on kind of various other signals that your conscious brain isn't used to picking up on, it can potentially allow you to just pull stuff clear of it. I mean, this is usually for gaining kind of consent or various other kind of agreement. But obviously, at times, if I'm sat with a client and I'm trying to get them to follow up on a plan, then it'll be like, so you're going to do this for me, aren't you? Yeah. Okay. And they'll be like, yeah, I am, because they're paying me literally to get them to agree to the plan that we've just developed together so that they'll stick to it. And if they don't stick to it, they've already agreed to it, and so I can then call them on it and hold them accountable, which is a big part of what I do after the planning and after the breaking down of boundaries and finding ways forward. the holding people to account is the next thing that needs to happen, because otherwise no progress gets made. But anyway, the next thing is mirroring body language, and this is one that's fairly well kind of recognized generally. As said, we mirror one another. We are very social animals, and so when it comes to sitting opposite one another to build rapport, potentially going, okay, well, to build rapport, we need to be on the same side. We need to be the same. We need to identify with each other. We need to have that empathy and connection. In which case, the more you appear to be the same as them, the more likely they are to accept you as that. So if someone is there, sat back, legs crossed, just off to the side, hands on their lap, then if you do the same thing, not an obvious mimicry or mockery, but you just cross your legs in the same direction, put your hands like somewhere in front of you in some kind of similar area, then they're going to identify you as being more like them. And so rapport and building rapport is easier. Can this be used to slide things past people? Not so much. It can be by gaining rapport with someone that maybe would otherwise be more skeptical of you. But at the same time, it's more a case of enabling communication. Because if you're able to be skeptical and questioning, regardless of what kind of situation you're in, then building rapport with you so it's easier to communicate and having that empathy with someone doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to let the wool get pulled over your eyes or anything like that. You're just going to find communication that little bit easier. The next thing is kind of one that I don't see all that often, because we suck at remembering names. There are an awful lot of people who names just don't mesh for. You'll see them, you're very visual, you'll know them by the way they look, the way they walk, the way they enter a room, even if you're not looking at them. You'll have all of those experiences and be able to know who it is. But especially in passing, or someone that you only know for a very small period of time, sometimes names escape you. And there are some people who go to pieces about it and are like, oh my god, I'm so sorry, I don't remember your name. And then there are people who, I'll admit, I'm kind of in this group, who if I can't remember your name, or even if I can remember your name, to be fair, I'll say, hi man, how you doing? Hey, what's going on? And I'll still be friendly because I know you, but I tend to refer to people by kind of nicknames or kind of substitutions, things like man and friend and whatever else, anyway. And so it's not out of character for me to refer to them in that way, as I probably referred to them in that way when I was able to call them by name. But it's one of these things that if you use someone's name, it strikes a chord with them. It makes them feel valued and respected, and is more likely to make them feel positive towards you. Why? Because the name that we are given, whatever name it is, it's the first core element of our kind of growing identity that we really have from the outside world. Yeah, we have our emotions, we have our thoughts in our head as they slowly develop. We have our preferences, but from the outside world, our interactions with it, our name is at the core of everything. Like, I don't think me as combination of fussy eater, cynic and kind of always curious person, I think of myself as, right, so at the core of everything, I'm Seb. Yeah? At the core of everything, my girlfriend is Hannah. There's those words that we've attached to ourselves, those designations, those signifiers, pull in so many different things when we're referring to ourselves, which is why sometimes it's really jarring, especially for people who have less common names, who aren't as used to experiencing it. It can be really jarring when someone else has the same name as you, because they have their perception and other people have the perception of that person as this name. And then you come in, or they come in, and you've got this different perception. So when you hear someone making that reference, it kind of breaks down a little bit. You kind of go, oh, well, no, that's not me. You're using the word, but it's not me, and it feels weird. Yeah? And that's why often, whoever got there first gets to keep their name, and whoever came there second gets a nickname or an addition to it. But as a result, if you're looking to build rapport, if you're looking to kind of allow people to connect with you, or if you want to connect with people, learn their names, use their names. If you've ever been in a situation where you turn up and you can't remember someone's name, but they can perfectly remember yours, then you feel bad. You have that negative weight on you, because why? Well, that core of that person's identity is something that you've just let go. Whether they're a good friend or just someone that you worked with or whatever else. If you've forgotten that person's name, then that core of who they are has been let go, and you don't want that to happen to you. So you feel not necessarily indebted, but you feel kind of an inclination towards that person because they remembered you, because everyone wants to be remembered. So the next thing is something that I've talked about before, and it's reflective listening, and that's something that I use a lot in coaching, where I'll be listening to someone and talking this through with them. They'll be doing most of the talking, and then every so often I'll go, okay, so as I understand it, and then I'll paraphrase everything that they've just said. And it allows people to think that they are being listened to, because you've had to listen to reflect it back, to paraphrase, to rehearse it to them almost. And so, hearing it from an outside source, that it suggests a level of empathy, it suggests a level of attention, which people want, and it allows for that connection to be made, that rapport building. Obviously there are elements of this where you can combine some of the things that we're going to be talking about, especially in the next few things, to kind of slip things by people when you're rehearsing stuff back to them. Yeah, especially if you're employing another couple of these things, which I'll talk about in a sec. You can take what they've already said and rephrase it in a different way, slipping in a couple of extra bits of information, and get them to accept that as well. And that can potentially kind of get things past people kind of easily, and it's not necessarily the most positive things that you've just got past that person either. So it's something to be aware of, but also, as said, it's something that counsellors, therapists, coaches, mentors, we all use this kind of reflective listening, where we're listening, and then every so often we'll just tell you everything that you've just said. We might paraphrase it, shorten it, shift it around in order so that it makes a different kind of sense. So someone's been talking to me for 5 minutes about how they are doing their job, and how they want to leave, and how they want to progress in a different career, and how all of these different things, in which case I can then put it into the framework that I'm going to be using with them. So it's like, right, you want to leave your job, this is the reality of your current situation as you've just told me, this is the options that you think you have, and then this is where you want to be. And they go, oh yeah. And I go, right, okay, so let's take a look at those different angles, starting at the beginning and working our way through. And so that allows me an in for the methodology that can help that person, as much as it builds the rapport, allows them to have a more ordered appreciation of what they're saying to me. It's expansive. It allows them to unpack things as well. So it's something that is particularly useful and particularly well used by coaches and mentors and counsellors and blah 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 blah. But it can be used. I've seen at least a couple of managers that would, when in the various places that I've worked, that would always paraphrase things back to people, but with their own, not just their own spin on it, but with extra instructions in there to get people to agree to it, and then potentially call them on those things when it had just been passed in at the last minute, and so it hadn't been part of someone's conscious plan, but it's something that they had agreed to. It's a kind of nasty way of doing it, and there are an awful lot of people who, going through manager training, going through all these various workshops and other things that you will go through in corporate management and other such areas that are similar, And they'll pick up these little things, or they'll go and do their own home reading, and they'll pick up these little things. Or I'm almost positive that someone who could watch this video could go, oh yeah, no, that's a really, I could use that at work and allow me to get ahead. You know, it's like, yeah, maybe if you do it in the right way. You know, if you're having trouble talking to your boss and you need to reflect what he's saying, so to make the conversation flow better, or so that you can mirror his body language or use his name more often, or whatever else from the rest of this list as we get to it, that will allow you to communicate more easily. Fine, that allows you a step up, because you're allowing yourself to build rapport and communicate more effectively. That's great. If you're going to go in and start trying to manipulate your boss by using some of these things, that could go one of two ways. It could go very, very well for you, in which case, fine, all power to you, but at the same time, you're probably a bit of a scumbag for taking advantage. Or your boss may very well know what you're doing and call you on it, and then potentially shit on you for the rest of your life. So, best of luck, I guess, if you want to try and use these things that I'm talking about in a negative way. But anyway, moving on, we've got using the same words, and this is keywords, yeah, not just repeating verbatim, but for instance, when I'm talking to someone and they always say that they see things, yeah, well, the way I see it, oh, well, seeing it this way, oh, well, the thing that we see when we're looking at this, in which case they're thinking visually, they're thinking through their eyes, they're thinking and perceiving and analysing information through the part of their brain that goes look at shit, see stuff, and so they're telling me, you know, they're letting me know that. In which case, when I'm talking to them, I shouldn't be saying, well, I hear that. It should be, well, if we see where this has come from, or if we see what we can find in regards to this, then they're going to be more receptive to what I'm saying, because I'm speaking their language, I'm talking in the way that their brain works. You know, there are lots of people who go, I feel this, I feel that, I feel like I'm slowly collapsing inside, in which case they're literally thinking, they're being cognitive, they're analysing it, but they're doing it in such a way that it's a more kinesthetic thing. You know, they're feeling. It's not a proper thought, it's as much a feeling as anything else, and it's a physical kind of experiential feeling as well. In which case, it should be, I shouldn't be talking to them about thinking or hearing or seeing. I should be going, okay, well, do you feel that this is this? Do you feel that that's that? How would you feel if? And as a result, again, I'm talking their language. Small different changes, little things to take notice of, but it can make such a big difference, because when you're speaking, it's almost like people speaking different dialects but from the same country, yeah? I'm not going to understand every piece of slang, every phrase that someone from up north says to me. And they probably won't understand every single thing that I say or reference, being mostly raised and living down in the south of England. And so as a result, when we meet, if one of us can learn the slang of the other, or learn the references that the other is using, then there's a good chance that the communication is going to flow more easily. Works exactly the same way. All it takes is listening out for those words and kind of just modifying the way that you're responding to fit the way that that person is thinking. The next one is kind of shitty. And this is one that I've seen negotiators use. I've seen salespeople use. And I'll admit, I have used in regards to getting kind of people on board with a plan. And this is using a scaled up and then scaled down request. So what you do is you come in and you go, right, we need to do this huge thing. Absolutely huge. And you know that everybody, almost everybody, probably not everybody, there's probably going to be someone that loves you enough to go, yeah, we'll do that, even though it's ridiculous. But most people are probably going to turn you down when you ask them to do this, yeah, when you make this request of them. We need to move this entire building 20 metres to the left. What? No, that's ridiculous. How are we going to do that? No, we're not doing that. Okay, fair enough. But if we're not going to do that, then could you possibly go and do this for me? Yeah, sure. Why do they say that? Simple. The big thing makes the thing that you actually want done seem more doable, more realistic, more reasonable. Yeah? And so if you walk in and you go, we need to move all of this stock, 6 to 8 tons worth, from this place to this place. What? But that's going to take ages. Okay. No, do you know what? Yeah, okay. So what would you be able to do this for me instead? Yeah, because it's smaller than the thing that you asked me to begin with. It also kind of plays on our instinct to be reciprocal, where, you know, if someone asks you to do something and you say no, then potentially you feel bad for saying no. Oh, do you want to go out for drinks tonight? Not really. You know, I don't want to let my friend down, but I don't want to go out. I feel bad for saying no. In which case, if they say, oh, well, okay, then let's go out next week. Then you go, yeah, that sounds better. That sounds better. Why? Because it's more reasonable and you already feel bad for letting them down the first time, so now you're going to say yes to the second thing. Same thing happens here. You give them a big request that's maybe more instant or harder to do or just too big. Maybe not just out and out crazy, because then it could be taken as a joke. But then you scale it down and you go, well, here's something more realistic. And they go, yeah, okay. Because even if it's still difficult, it's not as crazy as what you said to begin with. It's not as hard as what you said to begin with. It's not stressful as what you said to begin with. And so they're going to go, okay, yeah, sure, why not? That one I can get behind. That one I can actually manage. Now, I've seen this used pretty well, where I've seen managers who have just come onto a team and they've had a really hard time just meshing with the team based on where they've come from or what they're used to. And so they've used this to kind of get their team on board with what they want them to do. That's kind of what I've used this for as well. Yeah. If you've got, like I've seen teachers use this as well, actually, which was a really good one, where you have a class of really kind of upstart kids who have got a supply teacher for a day, and the supply teacher doesn't want to mess around or be messed around, and so they give us something really, really ridiculously difficult, and then they go, when everyone in the class just uproars going, what? No, we can't manage that. Then the teacher goes, okay, well, you're going to do this for me instead. How does that sound? And everyone goes, yeah, okay, yeah, no, that we can do. That we can do. And then they get to work. Why? Because the first thing was so much worse. So what are a group of kids going to do? They're going to go path of least resistance. If you only give them the 2 paths and the hard one comes first, then they're definitely going to go for the one that seems easier afterwards. Yeah? These are all things that I feel are kind of constructive uses of this. More broken uses of this. Abusing power. You know, I'm going to ask you to do this hard thing that would be work-based, but now I'm going to ask you this easy thing that's personal that you're going to do on my behalf. Yeah? That kind of thing. Stuff that is literally made up, or stuff that would get the other person in trouble to save the other person from doing it. You know, I've seen it used in that way a couple of times, and it's something to be aware of when someone is making requests of you. More so than you using it constructively, I would say keep more of an eye out for when people give you a really difficult option and then what they ask next. Because if the next thing that they ask is just as bad as the first, then chances are they're basically giving you an ultimatum and it's going to be shit either way. But if they come in and start talking to you about something far easier after the first thing, then either they've just thought of it, in which case you can't necessarily straight up condemn, but it could be that that's what they wanted in the first place. One of the things that I would do when I had a boss that used to do this all the damn time was go, okay, so that's what you actually wanted me to do, is it? And then if they just go, yeah, sure, then I go and do it. A couple of times, it would be a case of them going, no, do you know what? I hadn't thought of anything else until you pointed out that that was a bad plan. So now I'm going to take a look at this other thing. And I want something to get done, so we'll just do that for now. And so it's not always people being negative. As said, sometimes they're trying to be constructive with it. Sometimes they're trying to make things useful, or they're looking from a bigger picture, and so it's helping people be directed in the right way. But there are those times where people are going to use it negatively, and it's going to have some kind of impact that's probably not the best. So it's just something to keep in mind. The next one, and this is something that we see an awful lot in regards to political activists, especially, where I feel like this is where this one stands out the most, and people who speak very quickly. Why is this? Well, it prevents people from dissenting, because by the time that that person is able to speak and is able to dissent, you've already moved on through 3 different topics. You look at debates between the kind of regressive left social justice side of the spectrum and people who are either moderate or even people who are doing exactly the same thing from the far right, and you have either screaming matches where they're both talking very quickly, very aggressively, trying to get through their points and so on, or if it's with someone sat in the middle who's being moderate and who's trying to actually engage with what's being said, the other person will steam over them with point after point after point as quickly as possible, just so they can't be questioned. So when someone starts, there are people who just talk fast naturally as well, just as a thing to point out. But especially when it comes to debate, when it comes to things like that, I've seen this used in management meetings where someone has spoken very, very, very quickly, so that then you've got everyone else around the table only picking up a third of what's being said. And so when they go, so how does that sound to people? And everyone just goes, yeah, sure, yeah. Just because they've only heard a third, half of what's actually been said, and that sounded good to them. So the faster they're speaking, unless someone is able to pay attention to everything that's said, maybe take some notes down and pick it apart afterwards in a very methodical manner, you're not going to get the pushback on ideas. I imagine that last week we were talking about the Paladins kind of new battlegrounds mode and how it's crap, or how it's likely to be crap and just to be another selfish way of them getting more and more money. I'd imagine that some of their pitch meetings are individuals just throwing out ideas very quickly and going, so that sounds good to people, and everyone else just going, yeah, sure. Because whoever it is that's in charge, that's running with that stuff, is just throwing things out to action. They're not actually looking for discussion or debate. And that can be a way of getting things past people. As I said earlier, in regards to things like reflective listening, if you're paraphrasing very quickly and you're slipping in those extra little lines on this and that and the other, then it's going to slip past people because it sounds like what they've already said. So if it sounds like what they've already said, but it had 2 extra lines in it that were specific instructions that they've just agreed to, then that means that they're going to be able to get called on it. They're going to be potentially crapped on for it if they haven't done what was asked of them. It's going to be possibly a fairly negative experience overall. The next thing is smiling, because everyone likes someone that smiles at them, for the most part. Some people have trouble smiling just because of the way their faces are, and that's fine too. But you come in, you smile at someone before you start talking. You walk into a meeting room and you smile at everyone before you sit down, and you seem open and you seem happy. And so when you start talking, they're more likely to listen to you because it sounds like you've got something positive to say. You could be telling them that they've all just lost their jobs, but if you walk in and go, "Morning, guys," and then you sit down and you go, "Right, so what we're going to do is we're all going to just, I've got some paperwork to look through with you guys, and then after that you all have to leave the building with security." It lulls people into a false sense of security when you first step in. And I'm saying that as a most kind of extreme version, but I've walked in and done training with people before, had 15, 20 odd people sat in front of me in a corporate kind of boardroom or a meeting room, and I've walked in and one of the first things I do is smile at people. Why? Because they might smile back, in which case, that's good. And if they don't smile back, then at least they know that I'm trying to be friendly. It's that first step towards building rapport and all that kind of thing. and it makes people feel noticed. It makes people feel more positively towards you because you have made. It's like, you know, reaching out with an olive branch. You know, just going, here, this is me. Have smile. Now we engage, and it can be really helpful. You know, there are lots of people who have trouble with resting bitch face, with always looking miserable, with phasing out and just letting their faces go slack. It took, like, I always used to frown, and to be fair, I still frown a lot. Excuse me, but you know, it took me a while before I realised that, you know, whilst my face is completely comfortable doing this, where I've got these thick brows and this solid forehead where I'm just kind of always frowning, even when I'm raising my eyebrows in surprise, I'm frowning. And it took me a while to go, do you know what, I need to soften my face because I look like a fucking gargoyle and I'm terrifying people. And so, you know, it's all in the eyebrows, just relaxing your face, upper half, and it makes you look more open. It softens your eyes. People find it more attractive. It's easier to keep eye contact with you, and so on and so on and so on. Same goes for smiling before you come in and talk. Little caveat though: if you're coming in to tell someone that you're sorry that their loved one has died, maybe not the best thing to come in with a big grin on your face before you start talking. You know, it is obviously be aware of how appropriate it is in the situation that you'd be talking, but in a more general sense, you know, you're coming in to get a coffee, or you're coming in to go and talk to some people in a boardroom in a meeting, or you're going to see family or a friend just on a whim, or whatever else, you know, maybe just before you start talking, just give them a smile. It takes half a second, fraction of a second, you know, and then engage with that person, because it's just a little primer. Yeah. Like, again, there are some people that try to use this to prime a room to everything that they say, and that usually doesn't work anyway. This is something that, you know, it's a smile. It's a fairly simple thing, but you know, it's a fairly easy thing to pick out when people are doing it in an artificial way. You know. One of the people that springs to mind in speaking about this is Anita Sarkeesian with her feminist frequency videos, where a lot of them she starts off with some kind of bad joke and a goofy smile at the beginning of her video, even though she's about to crap on entire swathes of people and criticize things that really have no reason to be criticized in the way that she's doing. And yet she starts off with that smile, that primer. And, you know, it doesn't surprise me, because she seems like the kind of disingenuous person that would apply a smile to an inappropriate topic. Like, if I'm coming in and I'm talking to you guys about something serious, yeah, or something that annoys me, then I'll tend to come in, I'll probably be frowning, and I'll probably, you know, big heavy eyebrows sat over my eyes so I can barely see, and I'll be like, look, this is what I'm talking about today, and it sucks. Straight up, straightforward. I'm not going to be grinning about it. I might be grinning about it halfway through the video when I decide that it's ridiculous and it's a joke and this is how I can take the piss. But otherwise, not going to be the way that I present myself in that video. And now the last one, number 9, just to finish off. And this is something that you see in writing, actually, a lot, as well as in person. But use nouns when referring to people instead of verbs. Why? Because nouns, they're labels. They're things that you attach to people. They're things that you attach to yourself. Yeah? Verbs, the doing of something doesn't mean that you're involved in it. It just means that you've done it on that one occasion. So one of the places that I've seen this kind of thing kind of mentioned a lot is when talking about surveys, you know, especially in regards to politics. So how important is it for you to be a voter? Voter being a verb, it's the label, it's the thing that gets slapped on you, as opposed to asking the question, how important is it to vote? Well, it's very important to vote, but it doesn't mean I'm going to do it. How important is it to be a voter? Well, it's very important, and that's why I'm one. And that's why I'm engaged in being one. You know, But this is also where we see a lot of this identity politics and the verbiage used around it, or the words used around it, being applied and being used to manipulate people. Yeah, and they take it a step beyond just the labeling, but because they also draw kind of false equivalences through the way that they use these words and the way that they apply them to people and the way that people think. But for instance, the whole what's important about feminism removed, yeah, and it allows you to be critical. What's important about being a feminist allows, you know, it's the slapping a label on someone. And then the false equivalences that come after that are things like, oh, well, if you do X, Y, and Z, then you are a feminist. No, not necessarily. You could quite happily be an egalitarian, another form of moderate. You could assign yourself to any other ideology. You know, feminism doesn't have a monopoly on kind of equal rights and equality. And especially the current third wave, kind of more intersectional movement, definitely seems to be stepping away from that and towards something completely different, regardless of what they actually say. But as a result, though, again, like the slapping of those labels on people can twist their perception to either get you a response that you want or to open them up to other things. Ways that this can be used constructively, as said, things like surveys. You know, what's important for you? What is most important for you to be, or what is the most important thing about being a voter? Yeah, straightforward, easy, simple, allows you to very much attach yourself to that thing and allows you to give more of a reason to engage with the fact that you vote and you want to vote, and this is why. And if you're not a voter, then it means you go, well, there are important things about it, but it's not. But those things don't matter to me, and this is why. Yeah, it allows for that very clear distinction. Whilst what's important about going to vote, or what's important about the vote, becomes a much more academic and distanced question, where you're not personally involved, you're not personally put in a situation. So again, in that regard, I guess the way to sum it up would be careful of the labels people are applying to you, and always try to question. You know, try and see if there's a distinction, try and watch out for things like false equivalences being drawn as a result of people asking these things and slapping these labels on you. But, you know, for the most part, just something to watch out for. But anyway, guys, those are the 9 things, 9 manipulative tactics, which I use the word manipulative just because a lot of these can be used in one negative way or another, even if a lot of these cross over with just building rapport and being open to people and enabling communication. You know, there are just some things here to also keep in mind because they can be used negatively. And there are people that will learn these things or find out these things purely to use negatively. Especially things like the scaled requests, where big then small allows them to get you to sign on to things that otherwise you probably would question. But anyway, guys, I hope you found this interesting. Are there any other tactics that you feel that you've come across that you would add to this list of things that people should be wary of? You know, if there are, please leave them down in the comments so we can all learn from one another. Otherwise, guys, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you in the video tomorrow. Take care. Thank you very much for watching, guys. If you enjoyed this video or found it interesting, then please drop us a like, share this video, and subscribe for more, and I'll see you in the video tomorrow. Take care.